She believes Keiosha is being held against her will.
I know this child wants to be home. She definitely wants to be home. And the way she felt about her baby, this is the main thing. She loves her baby so much. There's no way in the world she would stay away from her baby.
That was the aunt of missing person Keiosha Felix, a 15-year-old that had a lot of challenges going on. Her mother was in jail. She was living in a group home for young mothers. Keiosha, a mother herself, had a baby at only 9 months old at the time that she went missing back in 2012. Keiosha still hasn't been seen. Is there something that we can do to help find her? It's time to turn on the searchlight. Hey everyone, John Lorden here with a special Brainscratch Searchlight. I know this is a Friday, but this week we had updates earlier in the week that I had to get out, so we're moving our Searchlight case to Friday for this week only. Today we're looking into the case of Keiosha Felix, and this is a story that got an okay amount of press coverage. Once again, I'm not really seeing a deep dive like local reporter that would keep kicking this case around like we do see sometimes on missing persons cases. Unfortunately, there's a lot of scattered media about Keiosha, and there's a lot of interesting developments that happen there. We're talking people getting arrested. We're talking people losing their jobs. Quite a bit to go through here. So I think it's a good fit for a brain scratch today. But this is still a missing persons case. The authorities have been very clear, at least several times during the investigation, that they don't have any reason to think that Keiosha is not alive, that they do believe they're looking for a living person. However, that was back in 2012 when she went missing. We're now at 2019. Do they still feel that way? I don't know, but let's see what we can jump into and learn together here. Starting with the location of where this is happening. This is taking place in Louisiana, which I'm going to for the first time in my life for CrimeCon next month. But this is in a town called Duson. Duson is a town in Acadia and Lafayette parishes in the U.S. state of Louisiana. The population was 1,716 at the 2010 census. This is a real small town. We're going to look at a map view, and I'll go ahead and show you kind of the street level of it a little bit. It doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of money in this area, and of course, some people have commented that might be part of the reason why there's not a lot of resources in terms of the news reporting that has happened on this case, or even possibly the investigation, though we're going to see that the Duson Police do call in some pretty heavy hitters in terms of the investigation as things go on. But let's start with the NamUs profile to get the basics of the case down here. Keiosha Marie Felix, a black African-American female, missing from Duson, Louisiana at the age of 15. Date of last contact they have noted here as April 30th, 2012. And there was a strange thing that happened with this case where they first considered her a runaway. And when you hear the basics of this case, I don't think it's too far of an out there assumption. But for some reason, they treat runaway cases differently than endangered or missing persons cases, which I'm not sure why they would do that, especially in a case like this where you've got a very young mother. I don't know, but apparently that difference in how this case was classified stalled some of the resources in terms of the investigation that would later come along with this case. So she would currently be 22 years old. We can see that her nickname alias is Red. I've seen that all over the place. But also she is called Ariana or Sexy Red. The most typical nickname that I've seen, at least from all the information I've been reviewing on this case, is Red. She's 5 feet tall, weighs about 120 pounds. In terms of the circumstances for a NamUs profile, this is one of the weakest ones I have ever seen. They really don't have any circumstances of the disappearance, just that she was last seen on April 30th, 2012 in Duson. Brown hair. They say that her hair was short at the time that she went missing. Brown eyes. And literally that's it. We've got no other distinctive physical characteristics. I don't even know if her ears are pierced. Judging on that picture, it's kind of hard to tell. They might not be, but we've got no scars mentioned, no tattoos mentioned. Clothing and accessories, we don't even have a clothing description here. This is a really tough case on the outset because there is really no timeline. You've got a few family members in particular that are providing most of the information about her disappearance, and the way that that's coming through in media is just that she just left. She just walked away. It's really, really strange. Now, one interesting thing that pops up in this profile is this mention of a 2009 Dodge Charger. And they're saying it's silver and black, sedan style, and that has a Louisiana license plate on it, TNF 426. I've never quite seen a profile like this where we have a vehicle being described, but even after going through the profile and going through all the news stories, I have no idea how this vehicle connects to anything. There's one article at the end that might show a connection between this vehicle and a potential witness of sorts, so we'll get to that. But just to be clear about the vehicle we're looking for, Louisiana state plate TNF 426. And if we go back to the screen share, I did pull up just a quick screenshot of what a 2009 Dodge Charger SXT looks like. This is a 4-door model. I don't know if they had a 2-door model also that year. And I don't know, when they say silver and black, are they talking about, is there black detailing on the car? Is there a line with the bottom half black? The only silver and black one that I've seen in these photos is actually this kind of race striping on this one here. Black race stripes on a silver car. So between these two pictures, I think you at least get some idea of the vehicle that's being looked for. But another interesting aspect to this is if they have the registration information that got the license plate, why don't they trace that back to whoever owns the car and go and talk to them? It's weird because they're giving us this info about this vehicle, but I really don't know how we're supposed to use it, and it's a little challenging. Now, the NamUs profile does have a few photos of her, but of course we're going to jump over to the best resource always in terms of putting photo collections together, and that is the Charley Project. And here we can see several different photos of Keiosha at all different times. Now down here, this girl wearing the glasses, that is actually her aunt, and there's other people that are from below there. So just look at these top 3 rows and then don't pay attention to that last one. The rest of them are all Keiosha. But let's go ahead and see what Megan Good at the Charley Project has put together in terms of the basics of this story. Keiosha's mother was in prison, and she was a ward of the Louisiana Department of Children and Family Services, the DCF, in 2012. She was living in Maison de Mer, a group home for teenage girls who are pregnant or have young children. She got a weekend pass to visit her paternal aunt, Patricia Andrus, and was last seen leaving Andrus's Duson, Louisiana home on April 30th, 2012. Keiosha was initially thought to be a runaway, and her 19-year-old cousin, Portia Felix, claimed she heard from her and she was all right. All right, so some interesting aspects we already have going on here. So we know the primary source of information in terms of her leaving, or the description of her leaving, is coming from this aunt. And we don't have, once again, any clothing mentioned. We've got this vehicle mentioned, but we don't really know how it's related. Did the aunt see her get in this vehicle? I don't think so. I think we're going to bump into some information later that will steer us away from that. But then we have this really interesting aspect where her 19-year-old cousin says that, oh yeah, I actually heard from her and she's doing fine. Let's keep that in mind as we roll forward here. And this is the area that she went missing from. And once again, you can just see very rural area. It's actually this trailer home park here on the right that she was at. That's where her aunt lived. In another interesting twist, her aunt does not seem to live there anymore, and the trailer that she did live in has been moved. It's no longer even in the park. But we can see we've got a big open field right across from there, and we've got a building here. I believe this is actually what they consider their city hall for the town of Duson. So, as well as a bank, it looks like. So you can get a good sense that they probably don't have a ton of services here. I don't know how big the police department is, but for a local police department and only 1,200 citizens, I can't imagine that it's it's a very large police department. But this is where she disappeared from, and we really don't have any other description besides she walked out of the trailer and just disappeared. We don't even know what she was wearing. So let's start getting into more of the coverage. This is from KPEL965.com. An interesting article, very quick. We get to July 25th of 2012, and arrests are made in the disappearance of Keiosha Felix. Family and friends of missing teen Keiosha Felix say police have made arrests in connection with her disappearance. Families say Duson Police still consider Felix missing, and they are asking for assistance from the public. They are asking anyone who has spoken to Felix or has any firsthand knowledge of Keiosha being in the Fightingville area at a Ms. Darlene's home or the Osun area to please contact the Duson Police Department. So once again, and I see all kinds of different cases and different ways that information is presented. It's really tricky when we're getting little nuggets of information like this, but we don't know the connections. I have no idea about this Miss Darlene's home. As a matter of fact, this is the only article that even refers to that. Fightingville, this is the only area or the only article that refers to that area. So it's one of those things where I want to bring you guys the best info I can so we could try to help this case. So I'm going to give you those nuggets, but in terms of how they connect to each other, we're missing some pretty critical pieces. Now, we mentioned several people were arrested. Who were those people? Let's jump over to the Daily Advertiser, and this is at newspapers.com. They had a front page article about the puzzling case of Keiosha Felix. This is from August 12th, 2012. And towards the bottom here, they note the key players, and we have 4 people. Yeah, 4 people were actually arrested. The first of them being Patricia Andrews. That is Keiosha's aunt. Also, she's the mother of Portia, the cousin that said that she spoke to Keiosha. She was charged on July 25th, and the charge, accessory to rape and improper supervision. Doesn't sound very good. Moving on to Portia Felix, the cousin, Keiosha's cousin, age 20 at this time, daughter of Patricia Andrus, also charged on July 25th and charged with obstruction of justice. Essentially, the police came to the determination that Portia was lying about speaking to Keiosha after the fact. Whatever phone call she says happened, they were able to prove that it didn't happen. So they were going to charge her with obstruction of justice. Now, we get to Leon Wilkerson, age 43. He has no direct relation to Keiosha. He is Patricia's boyfriend. I believe he was living at the residence at that time also, and they arrest him July 24th, the day before they arrest Patricia and Portia, and he is charged with second-degree kidnapping and rape. So we're hearing some very bad circumstances going on here. I don't think it's too hard for you guys to put together, but essentially the police came into some information that led them to believe that Leon had been doing some type of sexual assault to Keiosha. Patricia might have known about it. That's why she's accessory to that. And Portia lied about where Keiosha was, and that's why she's got the obstruction of justice charge. But then after that, on August 6th, we get someone else that is charged here, Ronald Wilkerson. Once again, no relation to Keiosha. He is Leon's brother, and he is charged with simple kidnapping. How does he play into this? I still don't know, and I've read all these articles on this case. But what we do know also from this particular article is Averlock Investigations of Lafayette is assisting authorities in the search for Keiosha. I've seen some links to a webpage that they had where supposedly they had posted some facts and some information. Unfortunately, none of those links are active anymore, so I can't really share with you guys whatever they were trying to put out there. But Jordan Hamlet, private investigator on this case for Averlock, said Ronald Wilkerson had Keiosha's cell phone before his arrest. He said Wilkerson was living in Jackson, Mississippi, which is why authorities searched there. So somehow Ronald Leon's brother winds up with her phone. How exactly does that happen? I have no idea. If you listen to family interviews and read family interviews, Keiosha absolutely loved her phone. She loved being on social media, big Facebook user. All of that stopped as soon as she disappeared, and we now know that her phone winds up with Ronald. We don't exactly know why, and they do wind up searching in Mississippi, but obviously they don't find anything. So interestingly, the local stations seem to be covering this case. One of the early articles I read to you was from one local station. Now at classicrock1051.com, we have another article on this case. Friends, family, and volunteers assisting in the search for missing Duson teen Keiosha Felix have set up a headquarters from which to base their organization. The Find Keiosha Felix Now Facebook page says Pastor Toby Ryder, in conjunction with the Duson Baptist Church, has agreed to provide the space necessary for the headquarters. And I really appreciate when I'm looking into stories like this and I'm able to call out when people are helping other people. And I think that's pretty amazing that this church and this pastor stepped up to help the family and friends in this case. Investigators from the FBI are now involved in the case. Duson Police believe Felix is in great danger. So definitely a shift in tone there, and this article is from August of 2012. So early on, they believe she's alive. Even around these arrests, they're being pretty clear. They think that she's still alive out there. Now they're saying they think she's in danger. That's not saying that she's not still alive. So do we have, I don't know, a potential trafficking situation going on here that they're worried about? I think they should be worried about something like that. With this particular set of circumstances, we've got two much older men that seem to be tied up in a potential kidnapping charge here. We have her phone winding up in a different state. Sure seems like someone could have been moving her. So I do think it's a good consideration, and we're going to see that at one point the police were certainly considering that as well. So we've got 4 arrests in this case, and then we hit another interesting development over at LafayetteCrimeStoppers.com. On September 11th, 2012, it was posted, the Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office has taken the lead investigative role in the missing person case of Kiyoshi Marie Felix, 15 years old, who was last seen on or about April 30th, 2012. The Sheriff's Office has conducted a parallel investigation for several months, but recently assumed the role of primary investigating authority after consultation with other law enforcement authorities. Investigators are pursuing leads in the case, but are asking that family, friends, or anyone with information contact them so that every tip can be fully investigated. Now, I did hear a podcast about this. I want to give them a quick shout out. Their name are the Queens of Crime podcast, and I'll have a link. There's a bunch of YouTube links down below. In that cluster of links, you'll find one to the particular episode about Keiosha. They actually had an FBI agent or investigator that worked on this case interviewed, and she was very clear that they really didn't get much for tips in this case. She said in the matter of I think 6 years that they got less than 50 tips, which on a case like this is practically nothing. I can't believe that it's so low. Also, there was some concerned citizens and family members. As a matter of fact, that clip that we started today's episode with is from a meeting with most of them that were trying to work together. And they were very clear also that the community just wasn't super supportive of trying to help in this case. And you're already talking about a really small community. How easy is it to get volunteers when you're only talking about a pool of just over 1,000 people? So it's weird because I almost think in metropolitan areas, you just have such a larger pool that if you can get the word out, of course, just the sheer numbers are going to work to your advantage in terms of bringing together a group. But with this case, it seems like the volunteers were always struggling. They were always struggling to find more resources, to find more people to keep helping with this case. There are a few pretty amazing standouts. There's a printing company that stepped up and decided that they were going to help with printing shirts and printing posters, doing what they could to try to help their community. But in all, you'll hear that there's just this kind of tone of they never could quite get the right help together to really move this case forward. But thankfully, We do know the FBI is looking at it. They are processing whatever tips are coming in. It's just the number of tips is really, really small. But interestingly, why do we have these arrests and then all of a sudden we have the investigation being taken by the sheriff's department? Well, something happened. Jumping back to the Charley Project, the Duson Police Department was originally handling Keiosha's case with Lieutenant Gerald Kruder, the Assistant Chief of Police, in charge. In September 2012, Kruder was removed from the investigation and suspended from duty, and in October, he was terminated. He allegedly made 2 unlawful arrests in Keiosha's disappearance, conducted illegal search and seizures, and provided false testimony. After Kruder was taken off the case, all charges against the Wilkerson brothers and Keiosha's aunt and cousin were dropped. The district attorney said the evidence against them was mostly unsubstantiated hearsay. Interestingly, in the video clip we started this video with, Kruder is sitting at the table with all those people. He's over on the right. So he's still trying to help the volunteers in terms of pushing this case forward, at least back when that video was filmed. But what's going on here if they're saying everything was unsubstantiated hearsay? It's pretty simple. Was her phone with that other brother or not? And let's start chasing it back from there. What is the path of travel? How did that phone get to Mississippi? How did the phone get into his hands? Not hard to think that it came from his brother, who's living in the trailer that she was last seen in. So it's interesting to me that there seems like a pretty logical and natural path that you can follow for there being some involvement, at least with one of her personal items, winding up somewhere else. Now, is that enough to charge someone with the types of charges that we've been talking about in this case? Absolutely not. So did he overshoot it maybe with the charges he was trying to get done? Possibly. But we also have to wonder, why do we have family members lying here? We're hearing that they were able to prove that those phone calls to Portia never happened. So why is she lying about this? Why do we have Keiosha's phone winding up somewhere else? There's some really big questions. Why don't we have a good description about what Keiosha was last seen wearing? There's a lot of things that are making me look very critically at that trailer, at the people that are in that trailer, and wondering, are they playing some part in this? But then you've got the other side of this. There's another possibility that's going on here. You have someone that's living in a group home environment at the age of 15, has a 9-month-old. And yes, we did hear from her aunt, there's no way she would leave her baby. But a 15-year-old, their sensibilities can be quite different. They might have swings in terms of how they feel about things. Is it possible that Keiosha did leave of her own accord? And maybe the shame of having left her baby behind is keeping her away. I think we really need to keep that in play with all this. But in light of a cousin that's lying, her phone winding up somewhere else, it's really tough. I mean, I'm basically looking at all these possibilities, and I don't know which way to go with it. But we do have someone that effectively loses his job for how he conducted the investigation. Over at WAFB.com, Duson, Louisiana teen missing since April, may be in Baton Rouge. And this is an article from September 27th, 2012. The sheriff's office says many of the investigative leads and tips received in this case are indicating a connection to the Baton Rouge area. The FBI is offering a $5,000 reward for information which leads to the safe return of Keiosha. I believe that $5,000 reward is actually still active. That's all that we get in this article. Not a whole lot of additional details there. So let's continue over at News 1. This is an article that was posted October 17th, 2012. A couple of other tidbits I want to share with you guys. Duson Police Chief Frank Andrew told the Advocate of Baton Rouge that police got a late start on this case because of the lies that were told by the parties involved. So here we have Duson Police Chief Frank Andrew essentially kind of saying the same point that I was trying to make. Why are these people lying right out of the gate? And we know, at least according to his input, that did actually affect how this case was investigated. The family said they had spoken with her, Andrew said. We assumed that they were telling the truth and that she was in contact with other family members. The Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office, who took control of the case, said in an interview with News One that the priority is finding Keiosha. As soon as we find Keiosha and bring her home, we will try to find what resources she needs so she understands the dangers of being a 15-year-old alone in the world and all the bad things that can happen. Of course, if she was facing some type of sexual misconduct from other people in that home, they were going to take care of, trying to find her resources of dealing with that as well. Duson's police chief, in text with the now fired lead investigator on the case, revealed just how serious he thought the case was. We may be dealing with a human trafficking case. We may have stepped in something more than a runaway, Duson Police Chief Frank Andrew allegedly wrote in a text message to now dismissed investigator Lieutenant Gerald Kruder. So, and once again, I don't think that is an insane thought with a case like this. It has some of the hallmarks of a potential trafficking situation. I think they should have definitely kept that on the list of considerations for what could be going on here. Police are still hopeful that Felix is alive. The consensus has been all along that we believe Keiosha is alive. Nothing to the contrary has come to surface, and we haven't recognized anything that says she has been harmed. Police are looking for a witness in the case who may have had contact with her. Now, one thing that just kind of popped into my mind about that is, from what I understand, the trailer where she was last seen has been moved out of state. And this is by the same people that it seems like are not telling the truth when she initially goes missing. Is there some potential that there is some evidence, maybe even Keiosha, but I would hate to think that, still in that location, in that trailer, but now in another state? Is that another mechanism for trying to delay or put off the investigation? Purely theory, purely speculation, but it's just something that springs to mind when I'm hearing about this and realizing that you can't even go investigate the building she was last seen. The building that she was in is now gone. It's now moved to another state. Just makes this case even that much tougher. So now they do talk about someone that they're looking for. Police are looking for a witness in the case who may have had contact with her. He purchased a device at a local cellular store. That device was used in some communication with Keiosha. We believe he purchased that device for someone else, and we want to identify him. Now, the image is unavailable from this article, but there is a website, findkeiosha.now.com, and here on the right, these are the images of the person that they're looking for. You can see it's a guy. He's wearing a white shirt. Looks like he's got some type of rosary necklace that is hanging down quite a bit, and some type of fishing hat. And there's several different photos of him here. Now, it's interesting because I don't know what type of contact they're talking about. Are they talking about that he was talking to her when she was known to have her phone? Are they talking about that he made contact with her phone in some way after she had gone missing? Because that could mean that he was actually talking to Ronald using her phone. None of those details are out there, but they do say he's not a suspect in the case. He has a brown skin tone, stands 5'7" to 5'9", and a stocky build. So that is the man. And as far as I know, they're still trying to identify this guy and talk to him about that. Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Department issues a press release April 10th, 2013. They just want to kind of let the public know what's going on with this case. I wish more departments would actually do something like this. The Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office has dedicated nearly 1,500 investigative hours and search efforts. This, in addition to the 500 hours by Louisiana State Police, the 400 hours by Department of Child and Family Services, 200 hours by the FBI, and 80 hours by the Louisiana Attorney General's Office. The Texas Attorney General's Office and Dallas Police Department has a combined 40 hours of officers' time dedicated specifically to the Keiosha investigation, and New Orleans Police dedicated an additional 12 hours. I don't know about the Texas connection. I'm seeing a few different references to that, but I don't know how the investigation got pulled into that area. I'm not sure. Once again, in a trafficking type situation, I'm getting worried that someone is being moved across state lines or even across international lines. So that's ringing a little bit of a bell for me, but I don't know what connects to Texas with this investigation. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children have provided countless hours in support of the Keiosha case. No less than 2,300 investigative hours has been dedicated to this investigation to date. During this time, investigators have conducted 72 interviews, issued 20 subpoenas, and executed 4 search warrants. Over 2,000 flyers have been distributed, and countless electronic missing person flyers have been distributed. There has been 17 tips received at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children phone lines, an additional 3 tips called into Crime Stoppers, and 7 tips reported to law enforcement. I mean, admittedly, we're talking about just at the kind of the 1-year mark of her disappearance. But once again, for tips, I mean, that is just ridiculously low. And like I mentioned before, the FBI agent says that as of 6 years after the fact, they've received less than 50 tips. One good thing did happen in all this. A team that resembled Keiosha that had run away from her Northeast Texas home was found by investigators thanks to a tip. They thought it was Keiosha, but they found this other girl and brought her home. Currently, these leads have been exhausted, and investigators are asking for the public's assistance. Investigators still hope to identify and interview a male who was captured on surveillance video at Lafayette AT&T store. He's not a suspect in any criminal matter, which once again just makes me wonder, why is it so hard to track this guy down? If he's not a suspect, I can't imagine that after all these years, no one has spoken to him, or that no one has put it together, looked at that picture. Hey, that's Uncle Jeff. I mean, it just kind of blows my mind. But admittedly, the coverage in this case it's just kind of all over the place. I mean, there's a lot of people that are trying to be helpful in these kind of small contained bursts. There isn't a really focused effort by any particular news agency that I can see, or like a really good investigative reporter that has really dug in and stuck things out with this case. Moving over to theadvocate.com. 3 years after Duson teenager disappeared, deputy says tips have dried up. And this is May 14th, 2015 that this is published. Her daughter, who is now almost 4 years old, has been in state custody since. Now, the FBI agent that I heard on the podcast did state that the daughter actually is staying with family members. So I don't know if they are fostering the daughter essentially, or if things have changed and she has been taken out of state custody and is now back with family members. But I do believe the podcast is more current information than this. The case is open but inactive, especially since tips have dried up over the last 2 years, said Captain John Babin. Babin said investigators never identified the man sought at the AT&T store. Investigators determined that somehow he had access to Keiosha's smartphone. A little bit of a different statement there. And actually in the podcast, I think the FBI agent even says something differently about it, more like he came in, I think, either with a SIM card that was related to her cell phone or a SIM card that had made contact with her cell phone, something along those lines. So we've got really fuzzy, once again, this is the case of fuzzy details around the importance of this item. And really, it's hard for us to understand the connection there. But here is that article I referred to earlier. Investigators also haven't found a connection between the man in those images and a silver and black 2009 Dodge Charger SXT that was of interest in the case, Babin said. So I don't know. I'm going to ask you guys, tell me what you think about that in the comments below. I'm really not understanding even what Babin is trying to say with this statement. It seems like for some reason they think the guy with the phone is connected to that silver and black Dodge Charger. Did they maybe have footage outside of the AT&T store, saw him leave in a vehicle like that? But once again, if you have the license plate, you should be able to track him down. So I'm at a complete loss of understanding what's going on with that. So in an interesting turn, we know that we had the Wilkerson brothers that were initially charged and held and then released. Well, there's more fallout from that. The Wilkerson brothers filed federal lawsuits against former Duson Police Chief Frank Andrew and Kruder. Kruder filed his own suit for damages, which was settled in November. So essentially, Kruder gets paid off to make that lawsuit go away. The Wilkerson suits were settled in February, but it's unknown how much money they were paid. So the Wilkersons also, I always wonder about this. If someone was really guilty of doing something, would they would they respond with a lawsuit like this and risk having a discovery process that might find out they were actually involved in the original crime they were being charged with? I kind of doubt it. I don't think that that's a hard, fast rule. I don't think that you could say anytime you see this, well, that must mean that they're innocent. But it's pretty interesting to me here that they decided to sue and that they wound up getting a settlement is even more interesting. It's almost, it's almost hard to say at that point that you couldn't at least consider them innocent, or that there just wasn't enough information to really prove that they were guilty. But I don't know that I would expose myself to all that if I was someone trying to get away with a crime, to put myself back into a legal process where all that stuff can be opened out because it's very pertinent to the case. I don't know. Now, Kip Judas, who was involved with the sheriff's office investigation, has been appointed police chief of Duson. My ears and eyes are open, and if there's something that develops, I will certainly channel that information to the sheriff's office, Judas said. Very interesting case. And once again, we're seeing kind of small town relationships in terms of, we have someone worked the case in the sheriff's department. Now he's the police chief back for Duson, but they're not the point on the investigation anymore. Over at theadvertiser.com, this is an article that was updated May 1st, 2018. April 30th marked the 6-year anniversary of the disappearance of Keiosha Felix. Last year, authorities released a photo of what Felix might look like today. If she is still alive, she would have turned 21 years old on April 8th. I think that's a typo. I think it's actually August 8th. In 2017, the sheriff's office said Felix may be in the company of an adult man or woman. They may still be in the local area, or they may travel to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, or Houston, Texas. So once again, we're getting this connectivity to Texas. I'm not totally sure where it's coming from, but kind of a strange statement, maybe in the company of an adult man or woman. And once again, makes me wonder if they're kind of back on the trafficking situation, if they're thinking that that's what they're looking at with this case. In the links below, I'm going to include a link to a thread at Web Sleuths about this case. It's got about 16 pages, plenty to go through there. And here is the FBI's poster for Keiosha. I'm going to put it to you guys. What do you think is going on with this case? Are we looking at a human trafficking situation? Are we looking at someone that didn't want to be a mother and left the situation? Is there something else that's going on here with that family? Possibly why they would lie to slow down the investigation? Is there something going on with the trailer being moved to a different state? How did that phone get into Mississippi? How did it wind up in the hands of the brother of someone that was living in that trailer? A lot of questions. Let's talk about those in the comment box below. And if you have some information, I've got all kinds of contact details down below. There are several different departments that you can call, but there's also the FBI tip website. I've got a link to that down below as well. Crime Stoppers is down there if you want to remain anonymous. There are all kinds of different ways that you can get a tip in on this case. And this case desperately needs tips. Once again, quick shout out to Queens of Crime for their coverage on this case. I really enjoyed this episode. I thought they got a really good interview out of that. In the links below, you'll also find a link to the Facebook page for Find Keiosha Now, as well as the website. So you can come here and check it out. Unfortunately, there hasn't really been any updates for about the past year. So that's part of the reason why I wanted to cover this case. The YouTube coverage on this case, also some people trying to be very helpful, but very spotty. There isn't one kind of good overarching version of what's going on with this case. So that's why I wanted to put this video together and get it out there. And I did want to note that we leaned on the Charley Project a bit for this case. I use them as a resource very regularly on this channel, and Megan is asking for a little help. For $3 a month, less than the price of a McDonald's milkshake, you can help maintain one of the largest, most detailed missing person databases online. In exchange, this important tool can still be used by hundreds of thousands of people around the world, including law enforcement, journalists, podcasters, missing persons families, bloggers, amateur sleuths, and more. Any amount is appreciated. If you'd like to donate to the Charley Project, please see the link down below. There's a link that you can click on here, and that is to set up a PayPal donation. You could do a one-time, you could do a monthly. If you just want to go to PayPal, you can send it directly to administrator@charleyproject.org. And on behalf of myself, who really appreciates Megan's awesome work on Charley Project and the Charley Project as a whole, and my amazing supporters, we are now doing a monthly donation to the Charley Project to keep them there doing that amazing work. Before I end today's episode, I have several new patrons to thank. I want to thank Colleen, Heidi, Lauren Booth, Dave and Michelle 607, Gwen Barringer, Taryn Linderman, Arden, Danby Ferguson, Miri, and Jenny Moore. Thank you all for joining on Patreon, helping to support me, keep me here doing what I love doing, trying to help all these other people that really need the help. This case today really, really needs the help. So thank you guys so much. On top of that, Olivia, Renee, and Catherine increased their pledges. I can't do it without you guys. If you want to help support the channel, you can go to www.lordandarts.com. There's a PayPal link. There's a Patreon link. There are shirts. There's an audiobook. There's all kinds of different ways that you can help support the channel, and I really appreciate if you do that. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here on Monday with a brand new episode of Brainscratch, Case Cracked on the Lord and Arts channel.